I'm Hazel. It's no longer Saturday, but that's okay. It's still time to sit down and catch up on the WoW news of the week, what I've been up to, and answer some of your questions. This week in WoW news, the biggest thing that's been dominating my timelines is the Great Mount Vote of 2020. Blizzard posted a poll on their forums allowing us to vote between 5 different mount concepts, and the idea is that the winning mount is going to get actually made and then given to everybody for free in Q1 of 2020. Sometime early next year, we're all going to get the winning mount for free in-game. So the 5 competing mount concepts are the Wandering Ancient, the Soaring Spelltome, the Nerubian Swarmer, the Curious Caterpillar, and the Gooey Slime Saver. We have descriptions for each concept, but no official concept art. There's been lots of fan mock-ups done, but there's nothing official from Blizzard, and my theory as to why that is I think if they did release official concept art for each of these things, and I bet you there is some somewhere, I think if they showed it to us, people would get too attached, and then when 4 of the 5 inevitably don't get made, or most likely don't get made, you never know, people would be a little heartbroken that their favorite didn't get in when they can already like see it and feel it in their heart. I'm holding on to hope that more than one of them might make it in like eventually one day, because, you know, we had that whole Azeroth Choppers thing where they were like, is it going to be the Horde motorbike or the Alliance motorbike? And then the answer was both, but the Horde one was free. However, you know, with 5 of them, that seems a little less likely. My vote, if anybody wanted to know, is for the Caterpillar. I am fully aboard Team Caterpillar. It just sounds so different and unique, and also more likely to fit through doors than the Ancient, which was my second guess. Last I checked, the Caterpillar was not doing so hot at the polls, but there's still time for it to get turned around. You have until September 18th to vote on your regional WoW forums, and I will throw some links down below. With a new week came a new Afterlives short, and this week we got to see Afterlives Ardenweald looking at the quandary of a... Quandary? Yeah, quandary? With the troubles of a Night Fae named Erelon in his grove and the soul that he had been charged to tend there. And all I can really say is that bear really can't catch a break, can he? I'm very intrigued by the Winter Queen character. I think it's possible there's more to her than meets the eye. She seems like a very nice lady, but she's got some real Lich King eyes going on, and I trust no one anymore, so curious to see how that turns out. And I'm really excited for next week. The very last Afterlives short comes out next week, and that's going to be Afterlives Revendreth, and I betcha they've saved a real good one for the end. In other news this week, the Shadowlands login screen was data mined, so we now know what that looks like, and it looks like this. I think this is really cool. I love it, but we don't spend time on login screens anymore. At least I don't. My Blizzard launcher just shoots me right past that, right onto character select. So I feel like it's been a long time since I've spent any meaningful time on the login screens. I have memories. I don't know if they're great memories, but I have memories of the Wrath and Cataclysm login screens scaring the bejesus out of me, because I would leave the game open, I think, while I slept to like camp stuff, you know, camping rares and whatever, and then I would be just like snoozing, and then the dragon would come by and make a loud dragon noise, and then I would wake up thinking it was my rare, but it was just Deathwing again. So unrelated and generally irrelevant, but this is a cool login screen. In Shadowlands news, we had a very long dev update write-up on the forums. I will link the full thing down below so you can read it in its entirety to get the full context. 2 big highlights and notable points from it for me. The first one was the big thing they talked about covenant swapping. If you've heard people upset about the lack of Ripcord polling, this is where that came from. Essentially, there was a lot of writing about the meaningfulness of covenant choice and minimizing the burden of regret of choosing the wrong one, and effectively what they've come to is that they don't plan to make it completely a frictionless talent swap, and that's not what they want for it, but they do want people to be able to swap and then swap back and eventually get caught up again if needed. It'll just take some amount of work to get caught up again if you swap to a different covenant but then want to return to your first one. It's probably going to discourage most people from switching covenants like every day or every week, but between raid tiers is more likely and more reasonable. They've explicitly said that among their goals of designing and balancing these, that they want players to feel viable regardless of their covenant choice. And I'm very curious and interested to see how that one works out. Like, after we're a couple of patches into Shadowlands, or maybe even in the next expansion looking back, I'm curious to see how close to that goal they can get for most people, because I feel like that's a very individual thing, is whether or not you feel viable. Because for somebody like me at my gameplay level and my relative laid-backness about min-maxing, where I like to min-max, but as soon as it gets uncomfortable, I usually put it down and just kind of live my life with whatever I've got. I think this is going to be fine for me. I think I'm going to be able to make a choice. I'm going to be able to get invested in the story and the theme of my covenant. I'm going to be excited about situations where I'm good, and then when I'm not good, I'm just going to be like, well, we still cleared the content, so no harm done. That's my outlook, but I totally understand that is not the case for everybody, and it's going to be interesting to see how this one works out for the masses in the long run. The second highlight for me is what they said about PvP itemization, and this is more concerning to me. For some context, on the Shadowlands beta, there have been a lot of concerns from PvPers about the PvP gear on the vendors being either not best in slot, or being itemized oddly, or even being itemized differently on Horde vendors versus Alliance vendors, and how it still seems quite likely that you're going to need to do some amount of raiding or Mythic Plus or all of the above to get really fully set up for PvP. And the sentence happened in this blog post that we feel the very strongest characters should be the ones who participate and excel in a wide range of activities, but each individual progression path should offer the majority of the tools required for success in that path. So that's the goal that they're designing towards. They're going to be making changes to PvP gear on beta, hopefully, towards that goal of making sure that you can get most of what you need to PvP off the PvP vendors. That philosophy, particularly the first bit about how people should do everything to be the very best, I think I fundamentally disagree with, and that's just a personal outlook thing. I think that each individual progression path should offer all of the tools that you need to succeed within that. And if you're not willing to split up all of them individually, then at the very least PvE and PvP. I can understand some like cross-dipping between Mythic Plus and Raid gear, but cross-dipping between PvP and PvE ruffles so many more feathers, and I just don't feel it's worth it, really. If I had my way, if somebody went crazy and put me in charge, I would take rated PvP and just put it completely back on templates. Like, you can say what you want about having that be really boring or how you feel like your progression should matter in PvP, but let that matter in world PvP and unrated battlegrounds and unrated skirmishes. In competitive ladder arena, I still don't see why they're very committed to letting us use all of this stuff, because it just forces a situation where people have to do the style of content that is so completely different. Like PvE and PvP, you know, they're often using different add-ons, they're setting up their characters differently, they're using different parts of their toolkit. Like, I play a perfectly good Resto Druid in PvP, and then I take that character into PvE to try to get, like, my Mott Trinket or something, and I'm kind of a disaster because my frames are set up for Arena, and I'd have to set up whole other profiles, and it's just a big sticky mess, and I wish they would give up, especially given all of these weird debacles about PvP scaling and, like, sockets making you weaker. All of those things would be not an issue if they just gave up and went completely to templates. Or, you know, if that's too radical, just let people play ladder from a tournament style realm where people can log in and make a template character and kit it out with gear just from vendors and get themselves set up to go like they do for tournaments. If it's supposed to be competitive play, I don't see why we can't get everybody on a fair playing field. Like, you can use your raid gear and your Mythic Plus gear to progress your honor level by farming out battlegrounds and world PvP, but I feel like if you want to progress in rated PvP, that should be from practicing and getting better. I don't think you should be progressing just for having put more time into it. I think that should be a skill thing, in rated specifically, but that's a crusade that I've been on for a while that I'm probably going to stay on for a long time, and I haven't seen any big change towards it, but, you know, I'll keep holding my flag. It's not going to ruin the game for me. I'm still going to PvP in Shadowlands. All I can really hope for is that they get PvP vendor gear close enough that I can kind of live my life on there without being wildly crippled for my lack of desire to, like, hack my way through Mythic Plus in a character that's not set up for it. In my life this week, Oregon, which is where I live, has been varying levels of on fire depending on where you are, but it seems that every major population center in Oregon has, like, its own wildfire or three just right next to it just for fun, and a lot of bad things, but I'm choosing to look on the light side because it's keeping me in a better mood. We are somewhat close to a wildfire where we live. We're not in evacuating distance, but we're in look at evacuation maps and make sure you don't get in evacuating distance. We're pretty close. And it means that we've had a couple of tense days just watching news updates from our local emergency services. And also the air quality has gotten pretty gnarly around here, as it has on much of the West Coast. So we're in this one together. Luckily for our local situation, the weather has been turning around and getting cooler and damper, and that's let the firefighters really start to move on to the offensive and get a greater control over the situation. So it no longer seems like we're going to have to pick up and go at a moment's notice. I can start to unpack my half-packed evacuation bags that had, like, some hard drives and stuff in them. We're perfectly safe, and our biggest problem at this point is just the air quality, which, as I mentioned, is astonishingly bad. So we've kind of like sealed up around all of our windows. We are giga staying inside, and we have air purifiers running in as many rooms as we can get them, 24/7, trying to keep the air quality breathable inside. So that's life for now. I won't lie, it has made me wildly unproductive this week. Aside from learning a lot about wildfires, I didn't get very much done this week, and I wasn't feeling up to filming yesterday. I had kind of a gnarly headache, so this video is a day late, and you know, it's okay. You know, one day at a time. We're all doing our best, and I'm feeling much better and more optimistic, so here's hoping for rain. Other stuff I've been up to this week, for my birthday, I got myself a bread maker, and I was kind of on the fence about it, because it's huge and I have nowhere to put it except for just like the middle of my counter all the time. But it's so much fun. It's like an easy bake oven for adults where you just put like stuff in there and then you turn it on and you come back a couple hours later and there's bread. It's fantastic. Although there was a typo that I discovered today in the recipe. I was making some whole wheat bread, and apparently there was a typo in the amount of salt for that recipe, and I should have noticed. It seemed like a lot of salt when I was adding it in, so I now have a loaf of very salty bread in my kitchen, but you know, it's not a big loaf. I think it's eatable. And then I'd like to thank you all for your very sweet birthday wishes here and on stream and in social media. I launched these comfy shirts on my birthday, and they're going to be available for 2 weeks, so until September the 22nd. I will link those down below if you're interested in getting one of these while they're here, but I just wanted to thank you guys. You've been so sweet, and it's made me feel so much better. And questions for this week. Derek asks, I have a ton of Expulsom. Should I save these for Shadowlands or just use all of them now? Thank you. Use them up. There is no use for them in Shadowlands. They're not going away or anything. They're just only ever going to be used for BFA crafting. So I would use those now. And the same advice goes to your banks and your regent banks and your bags filled with gear and materials. Particularly double check your regent bank for BFA mats. Now is a great time to clear out, sell some stuff off, craft some last minute stuff to sell, and just kind of clean everything out ahead of Shadowlands. If there's ever a time to do it, now is the time. I imagine the values for those things are going to nosedive further than they already have once the pre-patch actually comes out. So clean out your bags, clean out your banks, and use up your Expulsom. You will not be needing it in Shadowlands. And Harry wants to know, regarding Legendaries at the beginning of Shadowlands, how many can we make? Is that more than the amount that we can equip and wear? So you'll be making one legendary at a time, and you can continue making additional ones for basically until you have them all. How long that takes remains to be seen, but you're only going to be able to wear one legendary at a time, at least in this first patch of Shadowlands. I wouldn't be surprised to see an update later in the expansion where they let us put on more than one, but for now, and the foreseeable future, you can only wear one legendary at a time. So the way it's going to work for most people is your first legendary that you craft, you're going to pick out your best in slot legendary, and then for your second legendary, you get to choose either like a more situational legendary for your main spec, or if you wanted an off-spec legendary, you would then go for your BIS legendary for your off-spec. Over time, you're going to rack up a collection of them that you can kind of swap in and out as needed, although I'm hoping that I don't have to swap in and out too many of them, because it means making a spot in your bags for like the gear, and I always end up accidentally vendoring the thing that you put in the legendary slot. That happens to me 10 times out of 10, so hopefully I'm swapping in like 2 or 3 and not like 7. And Jeffrey asks, have you had a minute to look at the Underlight Angler on beta? Does it still work the same? And is it worth refarming on a new main for Shadowlands? So I logged in and double checked just now, and the Underlight Angler, it is still there. It still works. It has exactly the same effects that it does currently now on live servers. You should note that as of patch 8.2, which is already out, but as of patch 8.2, they nerfed it a bit so that you can no longer equip it while you're already in combat to get away. And if you're already in shark form and then you get into combat, the movement speed buff will drop off of you, so you won't be swimming faster anymore, which makes it a little less universally useful. But if you're just trying to navigate around underwater with underwater breathing and a faster swim speed, then it is still worth getting another one. However, I have one on my main, and most of the time I just kind of like forget to use it. I had it stashed in my bank for a while. The breath bar doesn't seem like a very potent threat these days. It has been a long time since I have felt myself in danger of drowning in WoW. And then the movement speed is nice, but you can also just use underwater mounts, and I tend to miss my underwater mounts when I never pull them out. So it's nice to have, and it is technically worth farming another one, but I wouldn't stress about it too much unless you're bored, because there's other ways around those problems. And that has been my week. Thank you very much for watching. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on one of these videos, please leave it in the comments of the most recent one and include the word question to help me find it. Thank you very much for your patience. I know I have not been making nearly as many videos as I should be. I would like to be. I'm just doing my best, and sometimes my best is only a little bit, but you know, we do what we can. I do manage to get to stream most times, so if you're just feeling really lonely and you want some background noise, that is twitch.tv/Hazelnuttygames. We would love to have you around. And in the meantime, thanks for staying patient with me. Take care of yourselves. Try not to breathe too much of the outside if you have bad outside, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.